Hello, welcome everyone. As you jump on in, I'll let a couple people kind of file in and get themselves settled and sorted. And in a second, I'll get Jetha, who is my guest today. I'm very excited to talk to him about something that's very important to both Go One, but also to the broader community. And to do that, I'll ask him to share a video in a second to give you a bit of background on what's coming up. And yeah, thank you again for joining us. Thanks for taking the time, Jetha. All right, Jetha, do you want to just share that, give a little bit of a teaser into what's coming up today?
Yeah, absolutely. This video is a little bit about the Let's Talk and Walk campaign we're doing, which is an everyday campaign, and especially for World Suicide Prevention Day that's coming up on the 10th of September. So enjoy. I'm just sharing my screen.
We're walking and talking because conversations save lives.
And walking is a great way to start a conversation.
We enjoy talking and walking together because it helps to clear out headspace.
And it gives us an opportunity to spend quality time together.
It's great to talk and walk for your mental health
and for your fitness.
We're walking and talking together because it's a positive start to our day.
It's a healthy connection with others.
And for a healthy body and mind.
Because it gives us an opportunity to touch base and catch up with family and friends.
Whilst enjoying fresh air and some exercise.
We've been walking and talking together for over 20 years.
It's good for our mind, body and soul.
Here we are, all of us, talking and walking and spending some quality family time together.
And I like to walk and Ollie likes to talk.
I don't like to talk, you like to walk and talk, because I like to listen, because that's when we catch up on things.
Let's talk and rise! So why don't you join us to talk and walk on World Suicide Prevention Day, and to remember those lost to suicide.
And I think that is an excellent point for me to say welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. In particular, this is a topic very close to my heart and to a lot of people, which is about letting people talk safely. And I was very privileged to end up running into Jetha through various people that we work with. But before we jump in, I would always like to acknowledge the traditional owners, their elders, past, present, and emerging. And thank you so much for sharing your land and your culture with us. I know that a lot of the time it wasn't by choice and there's still a lot of movement to go in this space, but your traditions of storytelling, of community really make our culture stronger. And in particular for me, that is the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I would love to acknowledge the space that they open up to make sure that people are safe and happy and communicate with us in their communities despite everything that's gone on. With that, we'll also be sharing a lot of resources today, but I think it's really important that we say hello to our guest today. Jetha, would you like to tell us who you are and what Let's Talk is?
Thanks, Cam. Thanks for the opportunity and Go One as well. My name is Jetha. So I always say I come from the most beautiful island in the whole world. A bit biased there, Cam. An island called Sri Lanka. So I've been living in Melbourne for 40 plus years. And I guess my journey with mental illness subject today started about 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It's much easier to talk about it now, 20 years back. At that time, things were a bit different, Cam, about mental illness, coming out of the shadows. And I kept it as a secret. I kept it under the doona, under the carpet, whatever you want to call it. But 3 years from then, my passion was about helping people, and went on a holiday to my country. I was born in Sri Lanka and got introduced to a cancer hospital and saw the kids and mums, outpatients on the floor on corridors. And I felt like I had to do something about it, So fast tracking at the moment, 5 years later, about 7 years later, we built the largest cancer transit home in Sri Lanka, 194 beds. My passion was still mental health because of my story and the struggle with my OCD. And so I want to do something on that space, and pretty much took Lifeline to Sri Lanka. So I started the first Lifeline center in Sri Lanka. And it's been about 10 years now. About 4 years ago, I started questioning, why do people call Lifeline? Why do people call any counseling service for that matter? And it's nice to have a Lifeline and actually ask, why are people calling us? And most of the time, people call us for everyday issues that you and I go through, about relationship issues, or it could be economic problems, or, and then there's also mental illness and suicidal thoughts and abuse and the more the hard stuff. And it just occurred to me, look, we just need to get people to talk. We just need people to have that confidence to talk. We need to build the village around people, and that's how Let'sTALK kind of started.
It's wonderful. And I will point out in that vein as well today, if anyone has any questions, please shoot them through, drop them in chat, or vote them in the Q&A feature. I neglected to say that earlier, but I think for me, I've always struggled coming from a background where there was a lot of prejudice against mental health and the stigma around it, but in general, feeling confident to talk. And that's when I've seen some of your webinars and some of the conversations you've led recently. That introductory session you ran, I would love if you could talk about some of the foundational things with the talk strategies to give us an idea of what you're talking about here. For I know, conversations about are you okay, and those sorts of things. We feel like we want to, but we might not necessarily know how to. So if you could.
Absolutely. I'll just go through quickly. I'll just share you a slide that I normally show in my sessions, which kind of visually gives you a good understanding of what Let'sTALK is. So the first four letters is letting everyone talk safely. The things that make us fearful to come out and talk about our problems and our worries and our anxieties and our mental illness, even suicidal thoughts. So letting everyone talk safely is let's, and talk is about tell, acknowledge, listen, keep in touch. So tell is about seeing the telltale signs of distress and engaging in a conversation. So tell is about other people, not just the person who's going through the difficulty, is others seeing the telltale signs and approaching that person. And when that person starts talking about their issues and their worries, is to acknowledge them. Acknowledge them, their concern, and the person with gratitude. And then listen. Listen to help them externalize their concern, and finally keep in touch, whether it's yourself or a support service, or it could be intervention. How do we then make sure that that person is safe and looked after? So in a way, we're trying to build authentic conversations, Cam. At the moment, you could easily say from a social media perspective, I've got connection to the whole world globally in my backyard. But, when things get tough, when we're going through our worries and anxieties, some people really struggle to even have one person sit next to them and listen to them. So this is about how we can build the village and how we can have authentic conversations. So where does it fit in? People in distress, it is a big jump. It is a big jump to see a counselor or a psychologist or any professional for that matter. And most people don't. And men in particular don't. And that escalates, and the gap then becomes bigger. And then, it really spirals after that. So where Let'sTALK fits in is about making that gap smaller so that people can access help, which is helped by everyone else, everyday people, everyday Australians. So, if I look at the statistics, I think most of people out there would know some of this. If we talk about suicide, I always think about it as the peak of the iceberg. It's a number. In Australia, there's 8 people who die by suicide every day, of which about 6 are men. But things don't happen overnight. Things escalate from under the water to, and sort of become a statistic. According to Beyond Blue, 1 in 6 Australians currently experience depression or anxiety or both. That's 3.2 million people. According to Lifeline, suicide remains the leading cause of death of Australians aged between 15 and 14. And according to WHO, 800,000 people take their lives every single year. And these statistics, although I'm showing Australian statistics, this is very much about global statistics as well. And the vision of Let's Talk is about how do we then create an environment that it is safe to talk. So Cam, quick question to you. What's the most efficient way to melt an iceberg, mate?
I mean, I would always say heat it up, but that would be me saying heat the iceberg itself. I'm sure you have a slightly different answer there.
Yeah. So a lot of service providers chip away underneath the water or on top of the water on the iceberg. And the thing is, if the water is still freezing, the environment is still freezing, the iceberg just keeps growing. So really, Let's Talk is about melting the iceberg by heating up the water. And the water is us. Every one of us is the water, is to lend a hand and open communication with the person in distress, including yourself, and have warm relationships as opposed to cold relationships. And that's the only sustainable way to prevent suicide and let alone suicide, prevent a lot of other things that are happening in terms of mental illness, and that causes so much grief for families as well as businesses.
I think that's a really powerful metaphor that I kind of helped me recontextualize a lot of this, because I always feel like that there are certain times of the year, for example, like the 10th of September, when people feel like it's okay to talk about mental health, but there still feels like there's this stigma around of letting people actually talk, and that idea of warming up the whole community so that there are more opportunities for people. We know that stigma does play a huge role there, but what are your thoughts on how do we best break through that stigma when after World Suicide Day is done, for example?
Yeah. Look, every day is a World Suicide Prevention. I'll kind of look at the statistics, and I think if suicide was named as a disease, let's say it was, then we've got a pandemic year after year. We've got 800,000 people who die by suicide. We've got a pandemic day by day. And it starts with leadership, in organizations, whether it be at home, whether it be in school, in tertiary, or out in the community and workplaces. It starts with us being leaders. And it's about leaders acknowledging their own mistakes and fallibilities and say, look, you know what, I stuffed up, and putting their hand up, being vulnerable. It's about encouraging openness and framing things as a learning experience, and not this, deadline that people have to, if you don't, and create that pressure. Okay. So this is about letting everyone talk safely. Yeah. Asking a lot of questions, getting their opinions, because, there are people who just don't come out and talk about their stuff, and genuinely being grateful for honesty and vulnerability. And what I mean by that, Cam, is if I say, look, Cam, I really stuffed up, Cam, I really, I couldn't do this, and I'm sorry. It's about really genuinely embracing with gratitude my vulnerability of coming up and opening and talking about it. Brené Brown has this wonderful quote. She talks about vulnerability, and she says that, vulnerability sounds like the truth. Okay. It feels like courage. We know that courage and truth is not comfortable at most of the time. And okay, but they're never a weakness. It's a strength. Truth and courage is our strength, not our weakness. So it's really encouraging people to create that atmosphere, the water, so that people can come out.
I think that's something that, like, if I share a little bit of a personal anecdote there, for me, I've had friends that have struggled a lot with mental health, particularly in the last 9 months. It has been a really rough trot for everyone.
Yeah.
And when approaching it, I think before I'd done one of your webinars, I was going, well, I'm pretty aware. I've been working in this field for two years or so. I've done a lot of work in this. I can be there to help someone. And I didn't realize that the way I was approaching one of my friends is where they were suffering through at the moment was assuming a bunch of things about what they were going through. And you talked about people who believe that we may not have it. The person in the position saying, I've trained, I've done these things, I don't have any stigma, or, I don't have a bias against people with mental health. How do we tackle that piece?
Oh, good question, Mike. Stigma. That's a tough one. Look, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that we all have a stigma. First thing is to acknowledge that we all have a bias, And wherever there's a differential, there's potential for prejudice and discrimination. Stigma starts with stereotyping or labeling, as we call it. Let's take mental health, for example, mental illness, for example. In many countries still, people with a mental illness are seen to be dangerous, okay? Or they're mad, or they're crazy. These stereotypes or branding has been put forward. And what that creates is prejudice. Prejudice is an emotion of feeling, you know what, I'm scared of these people, so I'm not gonna go near them. They're dangerous, which creates then discrimination. It's a flow-on effect to discrimination of, not talking to them, not giving them fair opportunities, like jobs, for example. So these people who have been stigmatized, suffer from all parts, not just themselves feeling isolated, but their family. In some cases, in some cultures, families just put them to the side or hide them, from society, and society judges them. So family almost are in that the meat in the sandwich, so to speak. And sometimes media, portrays things and amplifies things as well. That's why we got anti-discrimination laws and media laws. And in Australia, we're very fortunate. Over the years, we've developed all that to make sure that the media portrays, we don't, in some countries, we still see newspapers of people, how they've died by suicide, which is really building that to that stigma. But for those people who think they don't have stigma, or feel like, they don't have a bias, I think it's about that belief. I always say, if you believe that you don't have a stigma, or if you believe that you don't have a bias, just question those beliefs. Because belief, to me, Cam, is the strongest muscle in our body, right? It's a strong, not your arms, not, it's your strongest. And belief is like a table. If you think about a table, and think about what's the minimum number of legs, Cam, to hold a table, minimum number it'll hold it.
Maybe three.
Maybe three, yeah. So three legs will hold a table. And let me just give you an example, a story I say, and I'll just make this up. And it's assuming, my mum or dad says, hey, Jetha, when I was young, don't go to those people over there because, they're dangerous. Because mum knows that there's a child there with a mental illness, don't go there, they're dangerous. So all of a sudden, when I was a small boy, I think, oh, don't go there because they're dangerous, okay? And then I might see someone in locked up who have a mental illness. I might think, oh, they're definitely dangerous. There's my leg, 2 legs there, Cam. And then I might see someone walking in the street who's making a ruckus, or, oh, they've got a mental illness. I might even cross the road and go the other way because I've got a prejudice. I'm scared, I've got emotion. So here's my 3 legs. And as life goes on, we build our belief systems on our legs, on our table that we eat every day. This computer's on this solid table, I eat here, and I build my legs. So my advice to people is question their legs, question their beliefs, and ask the question, if I go to mum and say, you said they were dangerous, 40 years on, and oh, we didn't want to tell you to go and speak to them because if we did, the other neighbors will judge us, So, so they weren't dangerous. Okay, so my leg falls off, and that person in prison maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was just portrayed in a way. There's my second leg falls off, and then my table falls off. So my advice to people is question your legs that hold your beliefs.
Yeah, it's wonderful to look at that, because that applies, outside of these contexts when we're looking at, diversity and inclusion, or just day-to-day work. When I'm saying, oh, that person can't do it, they're a social media manager, I shouldn't bring them in on this particular job, when really I'm not thinking of them as a whole person, I guess, in that.
Absolutely. And I think, the conversation is so important. Let's talk is so important. But what your mindset, what you bring into the conversation, your biases that you bring into the conversation is as important or more important than the conversation themselves and what you do afterwards, So just check in those beliefs you have that doesn't create that keeps the water cold. Warm up the water, guys. Warm up the water.
I think, and I'd love to delve into those talk strategies actually, because for me, that's a big bit of the next couple of months. There's mental health awareness month in October. There's World Suicide Prevention Day. There's going to be a lot of noise. And if people are, even on this call, not feeling like they're in a psychologically safe space and they need someone to reach out to, please contact us, or also I'm happy to open space after this if we've pulled up anything. But for me, these conversations that are going on, the first step that you talk about is telltale signs. If I notice someone's there, how can we best see them? Like, what does a telltale sign actually look like?
Well, I think, you know, we just need to look at our own assets, Cam. You know, we've been given 2 eyes, we've been given 2 ears, okay? We can feel, you know, we know, we've got intelligence to know. So really, my advice is to use our own assets, our sensory assets, to see the telltale signs, to hear what you hear, you know, what you feel and what you already know about that person. And just approach that person and say, look, I see that you're la la la. I hear that you're la la la. You know, I feel that you're not coping well, you know, and this must be difficult, but can we have a chat? You know, you know, so I think we just need to be mindful of our own assets first. And I think mindfulness plays a big part in not seeing the telltale signs. You know, we are so worried about the future or the past. We don't seem to live in the present moment. And if we really practice to live in the present moment, the telltale signs are right in front of you. You know, you don't have to be a psychologist or a counselor to understand telltale signs. It's there, it's in it. So I think there is about, and my friend Daniel Keeley, who's runs Yarra Valley Psychology, puts it beautifully. It says, to see the presence of the normal or the or something that's not normal, you know, it's to look at, you know, that person's normally like this, but it's missing today, you know. So what has changed, you know? So it's being aware of the telltale signs in what you see, what you hear, what you know, and what you feel.
I guess the difficult part then, though, if we're saying, hey, I see this, or I've noticed this, when we talk about that acknowledge piece, how do you actively acknowledge that without feeling like you're like if I go and say to someone, hey, yeah, I see you're not doing well. I'm not sure how do we do that acknowledgement piece in a respectful way? Yeah.
Look, I think if we approach acknowledgement with gratitude, you know, if you came up to me and talked about a worry, I'll be grateful that you've actually put in trust in me. You know, I'll be actually going, wow, you know, Cam's actually trusted me to share his difficulties. And it must have taken Cam so much courage to come up and talk to me about this. So I'll be acknowledging you, and the first thing I'll be saying to you, because, you know, you tell this, you see the telltale signs, you approach them, and people open up, and then you need to acknowledge. And acknowledging is that first thing you say after people talk about the issue is a make-break situation. You know, it's a deal breaker whether you continue that conversation going forward. So acknowledging is really about acknowledging your character strengths of opening up. So I could simply say to you, Cam, I really admire your courage to open up. This must be really difficult for you. Do you want to have a cuppa and talk about it? Simple. And what it does is it actually stops me from jumping in and giving you solutions and relaying my own story, which we're all guilty of doing. Yeah.
I think that's that urge to give someone advice rather than to listen is a strong one, especially when I'm, you know, chatting to friends or family that I've known for a long time, where I go, I can see what your problem is. But I think listening, I know quite a few people that we've made a lot of noise about mental health over the last couple of months at Go One, and
sure,
people come forward to me internally even and say, I don't think I'm good at listening. Being there for people and listening. Yeah. What would you say to those people?
Listening is a tough gig at the best of times, Cam. Don't be hard on yourself, you know, because we've been taught to say, you know, from day dot, we've been taught to articulate ourselves, you know. But once again, go back to your assets. 2 ears, 1 mouth. 2 ears and 1 mouth. Do it in proportion. You know, there's active listening, which we go through in the workshop, but I'll give you some tips about listening. Listen, L-I-S-T-E-N, right? Listen. Let's take the first 4 letters of listen, L-I-S-T, list. So think about, if you're in a conversation, is to get the other person to list their 3 F's, I call it: fears, facts, and feelings. Okay? Start with feelings first. It's much easier because then it allows them to blow the balloon. So get them to list their feelings, facts, and fears. And what happens there is you allow them to blow their own balloon. And once those facts and feelings and fears are out in the balloon, you could both of them say, oh, look at that, how about this one? How about this one? How do you feel about this one now? So it's externalized, and you know what happens in a balloon? Balloon eventually comes down, yeah? As much as we want to keep balloons up there as much as we can. But, it comes back to a problem shared is a problem halved. If the art of listening is to really get people to externalize their problems so that they themselves deflate. And sometimes I think just by acknowledging and listening, you don't have to come up with the next part, which is keep in touch, which is the K in Let's Talk. And keep in touch is really about, what can I do for you, Cam? Or if I can't, what else can I do to build the village around you to keep you resolving this issue, or keep you safe? And that could be intervention. Yeah. So we go through all that in detail in the workshops we run. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I will soon actually touch on something that's coming up next week that I'm very excited about. But there is one thing in particular that I'd love to ask before we jump into that, which is, if someone, at the moment, there's going to be a lot of movement to talking to people and asking these questions. If someone doesn't want to talk, or how do we approach that situation when we feel like they're struggling?
Sure. That's an interesting question, and a lot of people think people don't want to talk, don't want to. Let's investigate the word want to. Sometimes what I want today is different to what I want tomorrow, right, Cam? Life changes, okay? So if they don't want to talk today, they may be ready to talk tomorrow, okay? And the best thing you can do is to make sure that you make them feel that you're there. Okay, make sure that you make sure that, look, it's okay. I know you're not ready to talk about this today, but just know that I'm here for you. And then I can. It's a bit looking at a plant. When we, I don't know who's out there who's got a green thumb, but for those who love gardening, you could water a plant as much as you want, but the plant will only flower when it's ready. And it's not just about the watering, it's about the soil quality, it's about the environment, it's about the sun, it's about the shade. So don't expect people to flower straight away. Don't expect an answer or an open conversation straight away. What you can do is make sure that they know that you care.
And I think that's great. I'll open up for some questions here, but while we do, I want to highlight something incredible that you're doing next week, which is this letting everyone talk safely kind of walking forum that you've got put together. You've got some incredible guests there: the CEO of Beyond Blue, the president of Lifeline International, the CEO of Lifeline Australia. Kumar Sangakkara is a childhood hero of mine.
He's our ambassador for the foundation.
Can you tell me what this is? What's happening next week?
Look, actually, we have the Let's Talk and Walk campaign, which is an everyday thing. We just don't want to focus on a one-day campaign, because every day people are dying from suicide. Every day we need to start talking. Okay, so letting everyone talk safely. It's a forum, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Melbourne time, AEST, and it's really about asking our panel to talk about how important it is to let people talk safely. What's their thoughts? What are they doing in their space? What's Colin doing from a Lifeline perspective? What's Georgie doing from Beyond Blue perspective? Leilani Darwin, who's the head of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lived-in experience, is going to talk about perspective from First Nations. Brad McEwen. So I think it'll be an amazing opportunity for everyday people to listen in and listen to some of these experts. I don't want to call it experts, but people who are really passionate about mental health and suicide prevention in this space. It's live streamed on Facebook, so maybe we can share the link. Just like the page, join the event, and you get reminded. I think I'm not an expert on these things, but you get reminded and you can watch it. It's only for 1 hour, and it is going live globally as well.
That's fantastic, and it comes right at the point. Actually, we've had one question get shot through, which I think is very pointed, where if someone does seem to be doing it really, really hard right now, and they've asked for help during a conversation like this, do you have any advice for those people about what they could do, what the next step might be?
Yeah. So once again, keep in touch is about the K in keep in touch is, it's so important, Cam. The follow-up is so important. It's not just about the conversation. It's as important as your mindset you bring into the conversation. If you feel like you can't, or the help that's required is beyond you, and build those support services around them. Is it something that needs a counselor or a psychologist? Is it a call to Lifeline? On 13, 11, 14. Is it a call to Beyond Blue? Is it a call to the crisis support center in your area? Is it a chat with their mom, dad, sister, brother? So it's really building the village around them and making them make sure that they feel comfortable and there's somebody there for you. So one of the things that I feel that really escalates things is two components. One is people don't feel they got nothing to look forward to. Okay, they're nothing to look forward to, and they keep isolating themselves. The other thing is they have the perception that nobody will help them or nobody can help them. Okay, so outcomes and relationships play a huge role in building resilience for the person who's going through distress. When we say let's build resilience, hold on, how do we build resilience? Resilience comes from having something to look forward to, and having help of a friend next to you or a family member. So coming back to the question is about building that village around that person.
I think that's actually the single most accidentally wonderful thing that I've done following some of your advice there, was having a friend, and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you right now, but I know you keep talking about wanting to see a psych and being scared. Can I do you want someone to just go with you and sit there and be there?
Yeah.
And that, it really impacted me of how powerful that was for them, because they ended up going by themselves because they were so buoyed by it. They went, no, I can do it, but that makes me feel like I can do it.
Yes, you're there. You're a friend. It's like, don't walk in ahead of me. I might not follow. Don't walk behind me. I might not lead, but just walk beside me. So walk beside them. And you know what? You can have chats with them that is not necessarily related to their issue as well. Just have a general chat. Let's talk, guys. Let's talk about what they had for breakfast, what they have for lunch. What are they've got planned for the weekend. So that connection, the human bond, is what then helps them to resolve or face their issues.
I think we've gone a little bit over time, so I'll start doing the wrap up here. But I want to say thank you so much for your time and for giving us some of that insight and space. I know I want to set up some walks with my friends now. I've been doing it a little bit anyway, but I really want to start doing this as just a general process to check in and to say hello. I think at the moment, we can only chat to one person at a time in Australia right now. But it can be or even from a socially distant spot, but it can do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cam, for the opportunity.
Yeah, please check out Let's Talk. And in particular, I've linked that Facebook event into the chat. We'll also follow up with some resources on how you can get involved with Let's Talk, or if you are looking for something to do in the next couple of months around this topic, because I know there's a lot of people have contacted me saying they're a little bit lost as to what to do this year because of everything that's gone on. And please reach out to Jetha and the wonderful work that he's doing. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you again, Jetha.
You're welcome. Thank you.